taking time to watch this presentation on backup or disaster recovery. Which solution is best for your company? My name is Chuck Cook. I am president of RenovoData and a certified business continuity professional. Today we're going to cover a range of topics. First, we'll talk about a little bit about RenovoData itself as a company. Then we're going to dive right into backups versus disaster recovery. What is the difference? From there, we're going to review some different backup and recovery tools and their advantages. We'll even compare cost versus performance. Then we're going to talk about the case for investing in your infrastructure and how you could create your own hybrid cloud. From there, we're going to talk about how to estimate the cost of your downtime. And then we'll talk about other considerations that you should have in mind before investing in a backup or recovery solution. RenovoData is a regulatory compliant IT cloud services company, and we're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. RenovoData was founded in 2006 with beginnings that go back farther than that into the mid-90s. We've been providing data backup and disaster recovery and planning solutions for organizations all over the United States and around the globe. We've been protecting McCloud customers since 2009 and are honored to be a certified integrated partner. RenovoData's mission is to provide peace of mind, and we do that by utilizing the highest quality tools, technologies, and services that strengthen our customers' resiliency. So let's talk about backups versus disaster recovery. I can't tell you how many conversations we've had over the years where I might have a manager or a business owner, maybe they're not very technical, but a common issue we see is where organizations collapse backup with disaster recovery. Well, disaster recovery and planning for disaster cover many aspects of your organization, from the data, operating systems, your equipment, communications, people, and facilities. But data backup just covers one component, and that's your data. So for the scope of today's presentation, we're going to mainly focus on data, operating system, and servers. But as you can see, disaster recovery covers many aspects. So let's talk about the different backup and recovery tools and their benefits. Now, there are many flavors out there in the marketplace, and they're not all the same. So to help simplify things, I'm lumping them into three categories. The first category, this is the least expensive category, and that's usually file and database backup tools. Now, there are free tools out there, maybe with your operating system or maybe a free cloud storage thing, but be careful utilizing anything free. Oftentimes they're mining your data or worse. We utilize an enterprise file and database backup tool, and when we're helping McCloud users, with this case, the least expensive method, we go after the worst case scenario. We grab the mission critical SQL database for your McCloud system, your document power images, and your install files. This is so you can rebuild. Now, it'll take longer time, but if you have low budget, this would be the way to go. The second category, server operating system image backups. For just a little bit more money, we can utilize a different tool that captures the operating system and all the data in each backup pass. Now, restores are simplified. In an optimal situation, you can bundle in a Renovo recovery server, and not only would there be a local repository to store all the backups before they're sent off site, but it can boot up a clone of your server. Let's say your McCloud LME server went down. We could boot up a clone and you could run on it while your primary server gets repaired. This is a great bang for buck here. The third category, technically server replication and high availability are two things, but they're lumped together because of what it buys you. This is for those organizations who cannot tolerate downtime. You're making a capital investment up front to build out virtual infrastructure, so to speak, that allows one server to come up if another server goes down. And then you're going to have a license fee or a monthly service fee for the server replication piece. And what this buys you is not only is the data getting replicated locally, but it's going off-site, for instance, our cloud, and where we provide the software and the storage and a place to boot up off-site if, God forbid, you had a site outage. But it does boil down to time. So let's talk about the performance of each of these types of solutions and what kind of time frame you can recover in. The first category, where we're doing automatic backups of your critical SQL database and let's say the document power images, we're protecting that critical data. So if nothing else and all else fails, you can rebuild and restore. That is great, but it doesn't guarantee you a time frame because it depends on the nature or the issue that occurred. So let's say nothing's on fire, but you had a server failure and you did have support, hardware support and maintenance on it. They came and diagnosed there was a hardware issue, and let's say they didn't have the part available. Well, now we just went for hours to a day to get the part overnighted, and now you're looking at day 2 before you're able to rebuild the operating system and call McCloud and have McCloud help you reinstall your applications. Once you have it installed, now you can begin the restore process, so you might be 2 days into it before you're ready to restore. So your recovery time could range from a few hours, if it was just a simple file restore, to a few days if you had a hardware issue and waiting on parts. So let's say you can't wait days to recover. What are you going to do? You should consider a server recovery solution. Imagine capturing full operating system and all of its data in each backup pass. Imagine having a dedicated recovery appliance in place that could restore a clone of your primary system if it failed. And imagine being able to scale up or scale down depending on if you're growing or you need to get rid of some servers later. And let's look at the performance of this solution. So instead of possibly being down for a few days, we're talking a few hours to less than a day. Why is that? Number one, we have the operating system backed up, we have the data backed up, and we have recovery resources in place at your site to fail over or recover to if the primary server dies. So in that case where, let's say, the LME server had a dual disk failure and you have to fix it before you can begin a recovery process. Well, you can recover onto the Renovo server, get up and running, get your users booking loads and doing what they need to do while this system gets repaired. So if it does take a day or two for parts, you're not under pressure because you're still operating. Now, we can schedule a fail back to the primary server once it's fixed, one night or one weekend, whatever works for you. The third category, server replication and high availability. This is for the organizations that simply cannot tolerate being down. A day would be extremely painful. So let's talk about how we can remedy that. Imagine having a tool that minute by minute, it's recording the server. And if the primary server were to fail or crash or have an issue, you could fail over to hardware to up to the minute before the disaster occurred. Now the clone's running, you've lost very little data, your people are still operating, and then you can fix the primary system and get back to it at a time that works for you. But instead of taking up to a day, we've taken minutes to some hours. Depending on how many systems you have and how large they are will depend on the exact time of recovery. But more importantly, the recovery point, where you could lose very minimal data. Instead of losing hours or a whole day's worth of data, you could lose just minutes of data. But a solution like that requires an investment in your infrastructure. Now, for those of you who already have VMware or virtualization tools like that, you're going to say, yes, I know. But there are a lot of you out there who have servers with operating systems installed directly on hardware. So let's talk about the case for investing in what's called virtualization. RenovoData is a partner with VMware. We're also a partner with Microsoft, which has a hypervisor called Hyper-V. But in this case, we're going to utilize VMware. Instead of installing the operating system directly on your server, you have this VMware installed on each of your servers. Now, we convert your servers to a virtual machine running on the VMware, or in some cases they call it in the VMware. Imagine if one host was to fail you and all your operating systems could automatically, or if you don't spend as much money with a simple reboot, run on the other available servers. So now your LME or your database server or your term server isn't reliant on just one piece of hardware. It's relying on a group of servers. This greatly impacts your ability to stay up if something was to go wrong. So, when business owners and ops managers say, hey, my IT guy is saying we should invest in this virtualization, but it costs some money, do you think it's worth it? The answer is flat out yes. And the number one reason is faster recovery and operating system portability. Now, in addition to those benefits for the faster recovery, consider being able to upgrade the RAM on one of your servers. A great case is your terminal server. For COVID reasons or other reasons, you might have a lagging term server and it's just having to be rebooted every day and you're like, something's not right here. Well, it might be resource taxed, and one of the most common resources is RAM. Well, imagine if it's a virtual machine, you can shut it down, increase the RAM resources applied to it, boot it back up, and now your users have a lag-free experience. So tools like that will go a long way to helping you optimize your operations. The third area is testing and development. And in the McCloud ecosystem, upgrading to the latest version of McCloud often involves buying more hardware. Well, imagine that it doesn't have to in this case. You can simply buy operating system licenses, install them in your VMware environment, and let your McCloud team get to work on the upgrade. So we've talked about investing in infrastructure, but now let's talk about other considerations before investing in a backup or disaster recovery solution. Before you go purchasing equipment or investing in a solution, get together, owners, management, and your team, and establish your recovery objectives. The two primary objectives you want to cover are your recovery time objectives, which is how much time can you live with being down? And the second one is recovery point objective. And how much data can you live with recreating if you have to do a recovery? Once you establish these objectives, now you can map that, your policy, your objectives, with the current solution you have in place and say, okay, can we roll back? Can we recover as fast as we'd like? Now you have something to measure against in terms of shopping for a solution. Then you can determine, do you want to do it all yourself or incorporate a provider? Sometimes it's a hybrid approach where you might buy some software for the local, but then utilize a provider like Renovo for the cloud portion of it. Remember, free is not free. Oftentimes these solutions are spying on you, collecting data, or worse. If you utilize a provider, make sure the contract terms are flexible. I've seen instances where people are stuck in a contract where they cannot get rid of a server that's no longer in use, and they're still having to pay for the backup services. Or maybe they want to just scale up one or two servers, and that triggers a new contract that is very expensive. The next thing you want to look for in a provider is how is support given and what kind of hidden fees are involved. There are some tools and some of your mega clouds where they will charge you money to get data out, or if you need it faster, fees will be much greater. Next, we're going to talk about how to estimate your downtime cost. This often helps influence what are your recovery time objectives and your recovery point objectives. We have a free resource on our website at renovodata.com/downtime-calculator. Just scroll down to the home page, renovodata.com, look at the bottom, click the link for calculating your downtime. This tool is a great back-of-the-napkin estimating tool that allows you to put in your gross revenue numbers and number of people, and then maybe a scenario, how much it cost you to do the actual repairs, and then you can look at what it would cost you to be down. A great way to utilize this tool is to compare the way you are today in terms of revenue and size of organization versus what you were 1 or 2 years ago. And what a lot of organizations found is their decision-making process is based on how they were 2 or 3 years ago, not how they are today. So you might need a more robust solution today than you would have when you were smaller. So thanks for taking time today to talk about the difference between backup and disaster recovery. You might have more questions or like a customized quote. If you need any information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can go to our website, renovodata.com/McLeod, it is McLeod oriented, or reach out to us by phone, 877-834-3684. Thanks again for your time today, and we hope to talk to you soon.